Hi there, it's Lindsay Upton the Quilt Quine here with another little project on the Bernina L890 overlocker cover stitch machine. Now I am a quilter and most of the things that I do in life are related to quilting, but occasionally I do make other things, such as posh bunting. And I had suggested to my daughter, who's starting uni, that she might like some of my posh bunting, which is usually triangular, top stitched, ever so nice, but no. She wanted the scruffy sort of bunting that you buy in Oxfam, so I thought I'd have a go. Now, since I'm a dungarees fan, they often arrive very nicely and sustainably packaged in these little drawstring bags that are made from old saris. So I decided to use this as the fabric. First of all, I cut myself a template out of freezer paper. It's kind of an elongated rectangular oval. I don't know what the correct mathematical name is, but there you go. So this gets ironed onto the bags. Once I've got the freezer paper ironed onto the little bags, I cut it out and then I fold it over and I get a scallop shape like this. Then I take it to my L890 and stitch round it like this. So I'm going to walk you through what I did to set up the machine to do the scallops. So here we are at the L890 and I'm going to get ready to sew one of my bunting scallops. Remember that it was a long shape. I've folded it in half. I've given the fabric a little scoosh of spray adhesive just to stop it slipping around too much. I'm set up on a 2-thread wrapped overlock narrow with the right needle. I've made a couple of tiny adjustments because I did do some samples just to check that the stitching was as I wanted it to be. MTC to -2. I've got my stitch width at 1.5. And apart from that, I think I've pretty much kept it as it should be according to the guided mode. Okay, so I've got this little tail of overlock stitch here, and I'm going to just grab that when I get started so that it doesn't get tangled up with my project. I've got on the clear foot so that I can see what I'm doing. And I've also attached the seam guide to just make sure that I do stay in contact with the edges of my scallop. That's the idea anyway. And we'll see how we get on. So I'll just put that under the foot of there. I'll just put that under the foot. I'm going to make sure that the edge of the scallop is sitting up against the seam guide. Off we go. So I'm just holding the tails out of the way till I get going. And then I'm going to try and keep this edge in contact with the seam guide the whole time. See, there we are. Just don't want to get that sucked into everything. So I'll just push it out the way. It's very thin, slippery fabric. So I'm just using my fingers to push the edge of the scallop into the seam guide to make sure that I have as even a seam round as I can. You may have noticed that I have got a silky, bulky thread in my looper. Whoops. We'll try to keep the speed steady. So going round, keeping the edge in contact with that seam guide all the way round. Now I'm on the easy straight bit again. I'll go right off. Now if I've got a whole stack of these scallops ready, I can go straight on to the next one, which I think is what I'll do. These are all the same colour at the moment, but I do actually have quite a few of those little bags in all sorts of garish colours. So once I've got them all cut out, I will just whiz through my pile till I have enough to make a string of bunting, as long as I want it to be. Keep going. You can see how this fabric likes to fray. So this overlock stitch is going to finish it off nicely. Just ease it round. The scallop may end up a little bit wavy looking, which I will press. However, the bunting that inspired this in the Oxfam shop is pretty scruffy, so I think that's part of the look. So I have cut out lots of scallops from old Sari material. It's very badly behaved material, so my top tips are: use a very low iron, possibly a little bit of spray basting glue just to help it stay in place, and your very sharpest scissors. Okie dokie, here we have a bundle of finished scallops. I had one or two rejects, possibly because the material was so awful and slippery and I was in too much of a hurry, but I certainly have enough to make a good string of bunting. So the next thing we need is a string of tape or something like that to go across the top of the bunting for all the little flags to be connected onto it. So one thing I certainly do have a lot of is leftover strips of quilt binding. So I've got a great big long bit here, and it was 2.5 inches wide, but I have cut it down to 3/4 of an inch wide. Now, I was desperate to use the belt loop attachment, but I haven't got it yet for the Bernina, which is a shame because it would fit properly. But I was rummaging around in an old tin and found a vintage belt loop maker from a really, really old machine, and I have kind of stuck it to the machine with some masking tape. It's not ideal, but it might do the job. Let's see. I have cobbled together a belt loop maker for the time being because I haven't yet got the proper Bernina one, which would fit nicely onto my machine. But this is an antique. I found it in a tin and it'll possibly do for now. So I've cut down this strip of quilt binding that I had lying around to 3/4 of an inch because that's the size of the slot on this thing. And I'm using, let me tell you, stitch number 23, a 3-thread cover stitch narrow, in order to make a very, very, very long belt loop. On the front it's got 2 lines of stitching, on the back it's got a nice cover stitch, and I can't see any raw edges, so that's great. So I'm just going to join the rest of it, hopefully. Okay, the last job on making the bunting is to attach the scalloped flags onto the strip. It could be a cotton tape, but I've made use of some excess quilt binding. I'm actually going to sew the bunting onto the back side of the cotton strap because I'm going to sew it on with a 2-thread chain stitch, which I really like, and then on the supposedly correct side you'll see the nice little chain. But the thing with bunting is it doesn't actually matter which way round it goes at all. So I'm just going to feed a flag through at a time, maybe leave an inch or so gap until I put on the next flag, until I run out of flags or cotton tape. Let's just see. So a little while later, I sewed them on until I ran out of tape, and actually I think that's quite splendid, really. Not posh bunting, but the type of boho bunting that a student might like, such as you could see in Oxfam.